At this time, we'd like to call the Rules Committee meeting to order. Madam Chairman, can you please call the roll?
Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy.
Here.
Alderman Balmer.
Present.
Alderwoman Green.
Present.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderwoman Martin. Chairman Hubbard.
Present.
Alderman Rhodey. Alderwoman Martin, 5 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Our first order of business, I think we'll take up resolution number 68. Are you going to handle that? Oh, okay.
The sponsors over in the.
Okay, the sponsors. And I do believe we have some people here to speak on behalf of this. We'll have, you all signed up?
Yes,
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. Resolution number 68 is a symbolic piece of legislation which supports the congressional resolution, or House Resolution number 48, I believe, or number 40, House Resolution number 40, sponsored by U.S. Congressman John Conyers, the Democrat from Michigan.
Number 68.
Every year, he has proposed the same piece of legislation, the African Americans Reparations Act in U.S. Congress since 1989, calling for a comprehensive study and a special commission to examine the institutional effects of slavery and how it relates to society today. So the Black Caucus here in the city of St. Louis has decided to come together and propose similar legislation which supports Representative Conyers' bill. I'm just here asking for passage of this resolution from this committee.
Thank you. At this time, sure, and we'll see if anyone has any questions, but okay, go ahead. Sure. Whichever is best for you.
It's a long walk at my senior age. Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. This board did pass a resolution similar to this back in 2000. What has happened now is that the resolution in Congress has been revised, and based upon that, we felt the need, many of us, to support a new resolution in support of the revised version of the resolution. The difference is that Congress is asking for more extensive research and study on the lingering effects of slavery. And it's not long ago. You know, my father was born 1910. His mother was born 1878. That means my grandmother was born as the first generation free from slavery in this country. All of my great-grandparents on both sides of our family were slaves here. On my mother's side, they were held in bondage in DeSoto, Missouri since the 1700s. The point here is that Conyers points out that there is a need for the study to see the lingering effects of slavery in the American society. Those lingering effects, of course, have manifested themselves as racism, as disenfranchisement, as taking away, not giving the right to vote, and a series of other things it says are necessary to at least understand the impact if we are to undo what has come from it. He points out that the study would begin in 1619. 1619 is the year that a Dutch frigate warship showed up on the shores of Jamestown, Virginia. Dutch. Coming off that ship were 20 Africans, all with supposedly Spanish names: Pedro, Isabella, Juan. Dutch frigate, but with Spanish names. The historians say that they surmise that this warship, this Dutch warship, actually attacked a Spanish cargo ship, stole these Africans, and stopped in Jamestown to sell them to make money and to get other cargo. This started slavery in the United States. Now, at that time, the United States had a dual system of servitude as slavery, but also indentured servitude, where an individual, particularly in Europe, which was a European practice, where if you didn't have any money, you can enter into an agreement with someone and you would work for them for a period of time, basically for free, and then you would get certain provisions afterwards. There were a few Africans that were also involved in that. But in Jamestown, a woman was manhandled by the person, a white woman was manhandled by the person who held her contract of indentured servitude, and she sued in English court and won that they could not physically abuse the other whites who were indentured servitude. So several companies made the decision to focus their transatlantic activity on Africans. One of those companies at the time was called the Royal Dutch Shell Trading Company. One aspect of them became the Dutch Shell Company, Shell Oil. They began to focus, this would have been around 1659, began to focus the full life slavery of an individual on Africans, because they felt that it would cost them too much to continue in the indentured servitude process, particularly for Europeans, because they had rights in European court. The Native Americans, they felt, were not the same strength as Africans, and in fact, one of the companies was quoted as saying in some of the writings of the day that one African could equal the strength of 4 Native Americans. So they began to concentrate it on Africans, and this changed around 1660 when Maryland began to act a series of laws that made slavery a life institution directed at Africans. This is what Conyers points out in the resolution of why he says from 1619 until 1865, the impact. Many of our abolitionists made the point that whenever a person holds another person in bondage, the other side of that chain is connected to them. And so it's difficult to hold one group of people in bondage and think in those segregative and restricted ways without that spilling over into other aspects of life. So many historians say that that kind of thinking also spilled over into not allowing women to have the right to vote and into other types of oppression and discrimination. And this is why Conyers says it is necessary for the federal government to do a study, because the institution itself had become endorsed by government. And so it is necessary to see to what extent the lingering effects are continuing and how to begin to look at the possibility of addressing it today. So Resolution 68 simply supports the House Resolution 40 that would create a commission for the study of this. And I do ask the committee's favorable support.
Thank you. At this time, the speakers like to come up regarding Resolution 60.
Oh, they were just
They're not going to speak.
only they didn't want to speak, they just want to come and support.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. So at this time, we'll take questions for the sponsor of the bill, Alderman Kennedy.
Do you have a question yourself?
I can speak.
She said,
Oh, sure. Go ahead, ma'am.
My name is Columbai, and I am from St. Louis, born and raised. Currently a resident of Ferguson, Missouri. And in the last 3 years, after Mike Brown was murdered in the streets of Ferguson, I have understood that people from my community have been pushed out or just not been part of political life at all. And so I really want to appreciate this conversation that we're having, because it's a much needed conversation that we got to have. And I want to say that I have a deep appreciation for this that have been wrote by Alderman Kennedy and this young man. I have read it. Our organization have read it, and I represent an organization called the International People Democratic Uhuru Movement. And we have been doing a lot of reparation work around the world, around reparations. And we have been doing, we were the organization that had the first tribunal on reparations. And so, although I stand here and I say I definitely support this, I think it has some weakness. And I believe that the question of reparations to African people, African descent, black people, slaves descent, is not a question, because the UN have clearly wrote numerous of times that they support it. But it's in how to enforce it. Because it's not a question if African people deserve reparations. Through slavery and what we see today in the school systems, in prisons, in police brutality, in what we call horizontal violence, stems from symptoms of slaves' descent. And so I don't think, you know, I really appreciate this conversation, but I think we should be at the point of saying when and how are we going to enforce it. So again, I consider it an honor to be able to be in this room because I've been living in St. Louis all my life and seeing horrible things in the conditions that African people live under. And slavery was a crime to humanity. Uhuru, thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. So at this time, if members of the committee would have any questions or comments, so I'd like to call up Alderman Kennedy. You have any questions or additional comments? Okay, Alderman Baum.
No questions.
Okay, Alderwoman Green.
Just want to thank you for your testimony. I'm in complete support of this, and I also want to echo the when. You know, locally we have the Ferguson Commission report, we had the Spainhauer Commission, we had the For Sake of All report. We're really good at studying things, and we're not really good at acting on the recommendations that all of these studies give us, especially when they give us things that are hard or difficult or things that we don't maybe want to have the political will to implement. And so while I support this and would like to be asked to be added as a co-sponsor, I would also, like to, I think, ask it as we move forward that these local reports that we do have hanging out there that have a lot of data on them and a lot of recommendations for things that we can do now in St. Louis to be more equitable, that we really take that to heart and we start to put together a plan for how we actually implement those changes here now and at a local level. We could be waiting on the federal government for a very long time, especially with the Trump administration. And so I want to make sure that we are setting an example here in St. Louis of what could be with the tons of information that we do have right now. So thank you.
Alderwoman Spencer.
I have no questions. I'd just like to commend the work that went into preparing this and the thoughtful presentation. I learned quite a bit, and I appreciate your time.
And although you're not on the committee, Alderwoman Flowers, do you have any comments or questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I would just like to add that I would also like to commend the sponsor. He's a newly elected alderperson, but he's definitely making some great strides, and he's really moving forward on some things that we've been talking about for a long time. I definitely understand the importance of having a conversation and moving forward, but I do have one question in regards to House Resolution, is it 40, I guess? Are there, I know they've done this for many years, but are they making any additional progress or, having any in-depth conversations that we haven't heard before in regards to trying to push this? I know it's a tough administration at this point, but.
No, the resolution is still stagnant. It is supported by the Congressional Black Caucus and some members outside the caucus, but it's still stagnant. It has not even been referred to a committee, and I don't see it passing on a federal level whatsoever.
Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion for Resolution 68.
I move that we pass Resolution number 68 with the due pass recommendation.
Okay, Resolution 68 is passed out with a due pass record. Oh, I'm sorry. I got in my head that it was passed in bank, so I know we're all supporting it since last time, so.
Still
okay,
writing.
Right. All right, we have to go through these formalities, so, Madam Chairman, can you call the roll?
Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy. Aye. Alderman Valmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin. Chairman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderman Rhodey, Alderwoman Martin, 5 yes votes.
Okay, now resolution number 68 is passed out. Okay, next up, we have Alderwoman Spencer's resolutions. That's the minutes of the
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. What we have before us here with resolution number 60, 61, 62, and 63 are just some cleanup issues with regards to our Board of Aldermen rules. And the intent here, really, the impetus behind this really started when I experienced some level of confusion as to when an ordinance had to be prepared and submitted to the clerk in order to be before the board. And it was my understanding that that deadline was always Wednesday at noon, and I think that's one that we used. But recognizing now, in retrospect, maybe why it was, let me take a step back. The rules clearly state that you have to have these documents in by Tuesday at noon. I think we were operating under a deadline that we just kind of adopted that worked well. But I think it's really important that we, as a board, understand what the rules state, make sure that they work for all staff members that prepare our bills and put things on our calendars for us, and that we adhere to them out of respect for our staff and for each other, and that we follow the procedures that are in place. There's also a little housekeeping cleanup amendment, which just actually strikes the specific reference to Timothy O'Connell as our clerk, because he's clearly no longer the clerk of the Board of Aldermen. So what I'd like to do in talking with the chairman, we don't really have a need to vote on these today, but I think rather we could maybe get consensus from our staff, who works really hard to make sure these get online, and find out what works best in a general sense, but also in a situation like we're in now, where we don't have a board, we don't have a council for the board, we're short-staffed. We want to make sure that we have rules that accommodate all situations that the board staffing may be under. So really the intent here was just to clarify, make those things very clear, and maybe bring some awareness to what the rules clearly state as far as how we can all interact with them.
So at this time, we'll see if any members of the committee have questions. Alderman Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Which amendment is that?
So Amendment 1, what Amendment 1 does is specify when board bills have to be posted online. This was something that was missing, and we adhered to kind of a general rule of thumb. But I do think for the general public, we should have a specified time at which board bills are placed online for the media, for people who are interested in what we're doing down here. So that is what Amendment 1 accomplishes. Amendment 2 addresses the ordinances and board bills. And what I had attempted to do here was move the deadline from Tuesday at noon, as it states in our rule, to Wednesday at noon, which was the time at which we were sort of operating under, but it wasn't specified in the rules. I'm, as the sponsor of this amendment, not dead set on moving that. I do think it's important that the staff weighs in. The purpose of putting this out there was that, I just understood we were operating under this way, but I do think it's important to make sure that the folks that are accomplishing this task for us feel comfortable with this. Amendment 3 addresses resolutions, which has a different deadline associated with preparation, and what our rules state is they need to be prepared by Wednesday at 2 p.m. I'm certainly okay with having a different deadline for resolutions, but I did think that kind of combining the deadline would make it easier for all of us and the folks preparing things. The thing that does happen with resolutions is, to my understanding, that they continue to come in well past this deadline, even sometimes Thursday evening, which makes it really difficult for our staff to prepare them and have them ready for us. And kind of, even whether we change this or not, bringing some awareness to the board and an understanding that we're going to adhere to it, I think would really help increase the quality of working for our staff. And then Amendment 4 is just that simple line striking of the specific reference to Timothy O'Connell and replacing it with just a general term, the clerk of the Board of Aldermen.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Alderman Bowman.
Okay, so we're just looking at these, we're not introducing any amendments today, you just want, what are we, the legal process here as far as, what are we doing, introducing amendments to the, we're not, you don't want to vote on any of these today?
In speaking,
Yeah, I suggested that we hold them in committee to just get some better understanding about the process. We are in a transition period here at the Board of Aldermen. I don't want to pose any undue hardship, and I'm a firm believer in if it's not broke, don't try to fix it. But I understand that we sometimes do need clarification in our processes, but it's just something that I don't think that we should vote on today.
No, I just didn't know legally if we were going to let the staff read these over, or if they have to be present at a meeting and discuss them here, is our procedure as far as the Rules Committee, what the so we go by the rules here to change the rules.
I think what I would, as a sponsor, would like to do is follow the recommendation of the chairman and get some input from the staff members. Maybe there's not a formal process for that. They don't necessarily have to come testify. I can do some due diligence in speaking with our staff members personally and get just a general sense of what makes sense here. And then, as the chairman mentioned, I mean, they're just broadcasting this and having some awareness to it so that we are protecting our staff's Thursday evenings when it comes to resolutions and other issues of sanity when it comes to dealing with us 29, excuse me.
Just want to make sure we're going by the rules here, that's fine. So if you want to hold a meeting with the staff and do that, I believe that's legitimate.
I'll send out an email and see if we can get some general input. So I appreciate the hearing on this just so that we can continue to think about it in a concrete manner.
Alderwoman Green.
No questions at this time. Thank you for giving me.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, we definitely are going to hold these resolutions in committee to get some further understanding about how we should move forward in our duties. So at this time, we don't have any other business, so I would like to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Second.